I think I know most of you here, but I'm Dr. Monica Snowden, and I am the advisor for Deandrea's honors presentation. And it's been a real pleasure to work with her and have her as a student over the last few years, and to see this project develop. So I think we've had some fun as this has gone through this journey. So having said that, I'm going to let Dee dive in.
So my title is The Perils of an Unresolved Second Shift, the presentation of gender in the secret lives of women wives. My study examines the persistent second shift of unpaid domestic labor that's faced by women with the betrayal and media. I work to intersect with the economy, religion, and women when it comes to gender norms. The study does highlight the display of the double burden within both the public and private sphere in the reality TV show The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. Media reflects how religiously influenced conservative traditions can be questioned and reshaped, even as they continue to be upheld and reinforced. Some key concepts from our literature review was second shift. Second shift is when women are performing paid labor and unpaid domestic labor, which is cooking, cleaning, childcare, and also managing the household. This can lead to stress, unequal workload, and role conflict. Another thing I looked at was public versus private spheres. Public sphere is the paid work, while private sphere is home domestic labor that is usually assigned to women. Before the Industrial Revolution, there was more shared. It was more shared within the households, and there's an equal amount of leadership between women and men, and also the children. However, the Industrial Revolution created separate spheres and gendered labor division. Even when women enter the public sphere, they remain responsible for the private sphere, which created a double burden of labor. Gender roles within religion are treated as divine mission. For women's divine mission, that includes motherhood and caregiving, while men's divine mission is providing and authority figures within the family. The LDS has shown resistance to the shift in women's roles within society by reinforcing traditional gender expectations. I analyze this from an outside perspective since I do not identify as a member of the LDS Church. From Housewife to Heretic by Sonia Johnson, it has given me a better understanding of how LDS women navigate expectations around gender divisions of labor, while also understanding that some women may challenge these norms. When it comes to internalization of expectations, women can start to adapt these roles as part of identity and purpose. They start to have the pressure to meet the ideals of what a perfect mother and wife can be. Because of this, there can be feelings of failing and also guilt when their expectations are not being met. When it comes to reality TV and gender representation, it promotes ideas of women as nurturing, domestic, and family-centered. However, it can also become repeated because this makes it feel as if the roles are natural and expected among society. When it comes to digital housewife, it is more common around social media. Domestic labor is to be seen as aesthetic and to be seen as a trend. It can appear to be empowering, but it does not challenge the traditional roles. Viewers can start to compare themselves to reality TV, which can lead them to internalize these expectations. It can encourage women to succeed in both the public and private sphere. Reality TV can reinforce traditional gender norms by shaping audience behavior, as discussed in True Story, What Reality TV Says About Us by Daniel Lindemann. The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives does present women as challenging traditional gender norms. However, my question here is, how does reality TV, such as The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, reinforce traditional gender norms that tie women to the second shift? So for season 1, I didn't analyze all 8 episodes. However, from season 2 to 4, I only analyzed 3 episodes each. I selected the episodes based on the episode descriptions that focus on marriage, gender roles, and also work-life balance. Because of this, it was because of purposeful sampling that allowed focus on key moments where gender expectations were most visible. And it was also time-consuming to watch all episodes from each season, but however, due to watching season 1 fully, it gave me a better understanding of what I was analyzing and what I was looking for. So my codings that I did start with was money, which was who is the breadwinner within the family, God, which was questioning or reinforcing religion, judge, which was comparing levels of religious devotion, persuade, the influence of a husband's opinions, sex, sexual expectations and dynamics, victims, where men were positioning themselves to be the victims in a situation, pressure to conform to the church norms, shame, the guilt that was tied to not meeting expectations from the church, and then second shift was with balancing work and domestic roles. So I first organized this in Excel where I tracked the themes, the situations, and also the specific lines, and also noted my conceptions of what was going on. Then I imported them into Deduce, which I used for recoding and a deeper understanding of what was going on. So I ended up with 5 main themes, which was patriarchal control, where I merged sex and persuade together, which focuses on the male dominance and decision-making, relationships, and expectations. I then also merged God, shame, judge, and pressure, which led to social enforcement, which focuses on how religion, family, and peers also reinforce these norms. Money was breadwinner dynamics and financial power, while male victimhood was using the idea of male victimhood to reframe the situation. And then second shift was women balancing both professional and domestic labor. So an example that I found within the show of money was when Jen and Jesse are talking about who will be the bride in the next couple of years for Jen and Zach. Jen said, in his head, I think he thinks after 15 years, he'll be the provider, so he's more, my job's more important because I'm going to be providing us for life. Jesse then goes on to say, but he can't do that without you right now. Jen says, I'm currently the breadwinner. I'm providing for my kids, for my husband to go to medical school. Jen is the current breadwinner for her family right now. She is carrying the full weight of finances while facing a partner who doesn't validate that power due to ruining the vision of him being the head of the family. An example of male victimhood was when Jesse and Jordan are currently having a conversation and Jordan is arguing with Jesse about how she invited Marciana out to dinner but is bringing their son into the topic. Jordan goes on to say, our son one day, when he gets older and figures out all you did, he can be mad. Jesse said, yeah, and I'm going to be honest with him. Jordan goes on to say, you're going to be honest with him that you disrespected their dad and decided to go to dinner with the guy in the fair lift. Jordan isn't saying that he's the only one who is hurt, but he's also claiming that their son is going to be a victim due to Jesse's actions. He is framing the situation so that Jesse is guilty of hurting a child who doesn't even understand what is going on in the present. This makes Jordan the victim rather than participating in an adult conversation with his wife. Another example of male victimhood was when Jen was being busy with Dancing with the Stars and Zach had now taken on the role of being a stay-at-home dad. Zach goes on to say, since I left medical school over a year ago, I have been putting Jen's dreams and career first, and I have mixed emotions about it. Part of me is really excited for her because it's such a dream, but then there's a part of me that's like homesick and ready to go home to Utah. Zach is mentioning that he left medical school as a way to remind us of the sacrifices he has made. He frames his current role not as a choice but for his family, but as a loss of identity. This positions himself as a victim rather than an equal partner. By saying he is putting Jen's dreams first, he is implying that his own dreams have been forced into second place. This creates a debt that Jen can't ever repay, giving him leverage in the relationship by putting guilt on Jen. For social enforcement, my example was that when Taylor and Dakota are doing a coupling therapy session and are talking about what Taylor's dad said and how Dakota treats her, Taylor goes on to say about how her dad was, well, I don't know why I expected better when you jumped into bed with him so fast. This reinforces that women should adhere to traditional timelines for physical intimacy to earn better treatment or respect from men. Taylor's dad tells Taylor that she brought this onto herself to justify Dakota's poor treatment toward her. By saying he doesn't know why she expected better, he is enforcing the idea that for her failure to follow social and religious norms is her giving up her right to be treated well. Another example of social enforcement that I found within the show was when all the husbands met up for dad talk and Jordan is asking them for the opinion on Jesse and Marciano, and Zach wanted to talk about how it seems like mom talk isn't thinking about their family. He goes on to say, I just think it's sad that all these women have families, and that's not the number one thing they're pushing to fight for. And I think mom talk can learn a lot from dad talk, honestly. Zach is using dad talk as a standard for a correct behavior to shame the mom talk women. He is using peer pressure to label their behavior as deviant from the expected social norm of women, which is that a woman's primary role is to prioritize the family unit above their personal career. An example of patriarchal control that I saw within the show was when the girls were going to Las Vegas and Jen asked if he would be okay if she went to a Magic Mike show with the other girls. Zach goes on to say, do you want to go do that? Jen said, no, I think it's more of a funny thing if we do end up going. Zach then said, being divorced and taking care of 2 kids would be kind of tough, so I guess you can make the decision. Zach isn't forbidding Jen from going, but he is reframing her choices as a threat to their marriage. He is using an option that is going to force Jen to comply with him. He ends with, I guess you can make this decision, which is not entirely true. He has made her a safe option here, which is him asserting patriarchal control over her life and also their marriage. And another example of patriarchal control was when Michaela and Jace attend therapy to address challenges in their sex life, particularly those coming from Michaela's past sexual trauma, which continues to affect their relationship and intimacy. Michaela says that she feels like she can never meet his expectations because it feels like when I'm wanting to have sex, I feel like it's always kind of that mindset of, okay, I have to do this. Even with Michaela's past trauma, the expectation of Jace's sexual needs remains a constant reminder for her. This forces Michaela into a mindset of sex being a duty rather than a mutual desire. This reinforces a patriarchal standard where wives' primary role is to satisfy their husbands and do not take into consideration their mental health or past trauma. An example of the second shift was when Jessie is talking to the other moms about her relationship with Jordan and how it's been in the private sphere the past couple of years. Jessie goes on to say there are so many things I wasn't allowed to do, and if I did it, it would be a fight. I didn't do anything right, parenting, laundry, and housework. Michaela goes on to say, which is crazy because you were the only one who was doing it. Jessie is the one who's in charge of doing domestic labor in the house, but Jordan is still finding ways to make her feel like she is feeling. This shows that even when a woman takes on the full domestic labor, she is still going to be criticized for her performance by a partner who isn't even contributing. Michaela's reaction proves that the labor is invisible towards the husbands, but it is obvious to other moms. Lastly, another example of the second shift was when Jen and Zach were having a conversation that reveals growing tension in the relationship. Zach expresses that he's feeling overwhelmed due to Jen working overtime in the Dancing with the Stars. Zach goes on to say, I try my best to have a nurturing side, but I'm not my mom, and I'm not mom, and I can't. It's hard for me to feel that way, but then even when I try. Since Jen is busy with her professional shift, Zach is forced into the domestic role, but he claims that he can't fill the space due to not being a mom. Zach is framing nurturing as a female skill that's only allowed. This tells Jen that if she's not home to do so, the children are suffering. This places the emotional burden of the household back onto her shoulders even when she is at work. The show represents an illusion of empowerment, while the themes within the reality show reassert these traditional norms. LDS framing allows men to be authority figures so that women's professional labor is only tolerated when it does not affect their private sphere. The second shift is not being resolved but rather modified. Paid labor is a way to escape tradition, however, they are still finding themselves caught in the tension between their public and private spheres. The private sphere remains largely invisible due to the show not mentioning or acknowledging domestic labor, which brings these responsibilities to be taken for granted. This study uses Holschuld's second shift framework on a modern religious reality TV show, which implies the classic concept of unpaid housework as the modern work of social media management. Even when Mormon influencers appear to be empowering, they still carry the heavy and unseen burden of traditional domestic roles. There's emotional labor and the ongoing responsibility of managing the household still, and then those who are in the middle to upper class positions are able to afford additional support, which further isolates this labor by making it less visible. So limitation was I am an outside observer who does not identify as LDS. I do not fully understand the social pressures that drive LDS women's behavior and the motivations for actions in the marriage. I also did not watch all episodes from each season due to it being time consuming. This can bring a significant sampling bias, which can leave my data incomplete. However, for possibilities for future research, I think by incorporating interviews with LDS women who have watched the show to look at the gap between how society perceives them versus how they see themselves. Also, by watching all episodes from all seasons, could track the second shift dynamic and see if they intensify it or shifts later on. Thank you.
Questions?